When our power-hungry HOA president had my disabled wife's van towed simply because we hadn't joined their so-called mandatory association, she decided to unleash her secret weapon, her connections from 15 years on the force as a K-9 officer. Eleanor had no clue she just picked the wrong family to mess with. The doorbell rang just as I was helping Sarah shift from her wheelchair to the couch. We'd only been living in our new place at Sycamore Ridge for 3 days. "Can you get that?" Sarah asked, adjusting her leg braces. After 15 years working K-9, a bad chase had cost her partial mobility, but even with that, she was still the toughest person I knew. I opened the door and found a woman with picture-perfect blonde hair, holding a clipboard, flanked by two guys in matching polo shirts like wannabe bodyguards. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she said, her smile tight and practiced. "I'm Eleanor Matthews, president of the Sycamore Ridge Homeowners Association. We're here to drop off your welcome packet and collect your first month's dues." I scratched my head. "That's weird. Our realtor told us this property isn't part of the HOA. It's in our closing documents." Eleanor's smile disappeared. "That must be a mistake. Every home in Sycamore Ridge is part of our association. It's mandatory. Not according to our documents. This house was built before the HOA was even created. We're grandfathered in." Her eyes narrowed. "We're going to need to see these alleged documents. The board meets Wednesday at 7 p.m. Bring them." She shoved a fat folder into my hands. "In the meantime, here are our guidelines. You'll need to take down that ramp by your side door. It doesn't meet our aesthetic standards." My face flushed. "That ramp's for my wife. She's disabled. She needs it to get into the house." "Rules are rules," Eleanor said with a casual shrug. "You can apply for a variance, but the committee only meets once a quarter. Next meeting's in August." From inside, Sarah called out, "Who is it, Jake?" "Just the HOA, introducing themselves," I called back, trying not to lose my cool. Eleanor peered past me and spotted Sarah on the couch. Something flickered in her eyes. Not sympathy, but calculation. "Your situation doesn't exempt you from community standards. We pride ourselves on uniformity here." "Thanks for stopping by," I said, voice firm, already starting to close the door. But Eleanor wedged her foot in. "One more thing. Your wife's van? The one with the service dog decals? It needs to be garaged. No commercial vehicles are allowed in driveways overnight." "It's not commercial. It's a wheelchair-accessible van," I said. "It's got advertising on it," she insisted. "That's a K-9 support decal. She was a police officer." Eleanor finally pulled her foot back. "The rules apply to everyone, Mr. Reynolds. Wednesday, 7 p.m. Don't be late." I shut the door, hands trembling. "What was that about?" Sarah asked as I returned to the living room. I handed her the folder. "We've officially met the local dictator. She says our house is in the HOA and wants your ramp gone." Sarah flipped through the guidelines, her face darkening. 56 pages of rules? 2-inch grass max? No flags unless they're on approved holidays? This is nuts. "She also says your van can't be in the driveway because of the K-9 decal." Sarah slammed the folder shut. "That's not even legal. The ADA clearly states—" "I know," I said, sitting next to her. "We're going to fight it." I kept all our paperwork locked in the fireproof safe. That night, we went through it all. Sure enough, our property was explicitly excluded from HOA jurisdiction. The development had grown around us, but our house had been there a decade before Sycamore Ridge even existed. The next morning, I left for work like usual. Sarah had physical therapy at 10, so she'd be heading out later. I kissed her goodbye, not knowing a war was about to kick off. At lunch, my phone rang. Sarah's voice was tight, furious. "They booted my van." "What? Who did?" "Your new friend Eleanor and some towing company. I can't get to therapy." I left work instantly and rushed home. When I pulled up, Sarah was arguing with a man in a tow truck uniform, while Eleanor stood smugly on her porch across the street. "This is illegal," Sarah was saying, her wheelchair blocking the driver from getting closer. "You can't tow a vehicle from private property without proper authorization." "I do have authorization," the driver said, waving a form signed by the HOA president. "Violation of community standards." I stepped in. "This property isn't in the HOA. You don't have jurisdiction here." "Not my problem," the driver shrugged. "I just go where I'm told." Eleanor strolled over, that smirk still on her face. "Maybe this'll encourage you to show up to Wednesday's meeting." Think of it as a warning. Next time, the vehicle gets impounded. Sarah's eyes turned icy. What most people didn't know was that under her calm exterior lived a woman who once commanded armed raids and demanded respect from fellow officers. She lowered her voice. Take the boot off now, or I make one call to my former captain, and you'll have 5 patrol cars here investigating an attempted theft. The driver glanced between her and Eleanor, suddenly unsure. She's bluffing, Eleanor said, waving it off. Sarah pulled out her phone and flashed the wallpaper. Her old badge. Try me. 15 minutes and one very intense phone call. Later, the boot was gone. A patrol car showed up, driven by one of Sarah's former rookies, just checking in. Eleanor slinked back to her house without a word, but the line had been drawn. That night, I installed cameras around our house. Sarah got in touch with a lawyer friend who handled housing discrimination. We were gearing up for a battle. What we didn't realize was just how fast things were going to explode next. By the next day, Eleanor had rallied her troops. Neighbors mysteriously started blocking our driveway. Anonymous complaints were filed with the city, targeting our unsightly ramp. Someone even reported our sprinkler system for violating water restrictions, which triggered a surprise inspection. They're trying to break us down, Sarah muttered as we watched from the window. Eleanor was out front, leading a group of neighbors on one of her so-called property value walks that just so happened to pause right in front of our home. What is it they want? Us to move? I asked. No, Sarah said thoughtful. Eleanor wants control, but something else is off here. Did you notice how fast that tow truck showed up? I'm willing to bet there's some kind of kickback arrangement going on. So what do we do next? I asked. Sarah's jaw tightened. We gather evidence, we build support, and we prepare for Wednesday's meeting. That night, we dove into research on Eleanor Matthews. Thanks to Sarah's connections in law enforcement, we dug up some interesting info. 3 prior complaints about HOA overreach, all mysteriously dropped. Property records showed Eleanor owned a rental home in the next county, with a sign for the same towing company hanging prominently in the front yard. This isn't just about us, Sarah said, putting the pieces together. She's built a little empire, and we're a threat to it. Then came Wednesday, with a twist we didn't see coming. I got home from work and immediately noticed something was wrong. Our driveway was empty. Sarah's van, the specially equipped one, was gone. Heart pounding, I dialed her cell again and again, getting no answer. Just as panic started to rise, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. Jake, it's me, Sarah said, her voice strained. Where are you? What happened? They towed my van while I was at physical therapy, she said. I'm at Rapid Recovery Impound on Industrial Boulevard. They want $450 to release it. Said the HOA authorized the tow for a commercial vehicle violation. I tried calling Captain Rodriguez, but he's in court all afternoon. Can you come get me? I'm already on my way, I told her, racing back to the car. Hang tight. As I drove, the anger built. This wasn't just some petty rule enforcement anymore. This was a direct attack on Sarah's freedom and independence. Eleanor had crossed a line, and she was about to find out why that was a huge mistake. The impound lot was surrounded by chain-link fencing, topped with barbed wire. Sarah was outside in her wheelchair waiting by the office. Her face was a mix of anger and quiet humiliation. She tried to smile when she saw me, but I could see the tears she was holding back. I've been here 2 hours, she said as I knelt beside her. They said they can't release the van without full payment, even after I told them it's a mobility vehicle. I squeezed her hand. We'll pay it, for now. Then we take this legal. Did you get any paperwork? I asked. She handed me the form, authorized by Eleanor Matthews for removal due to a so-called commercial vehicle violation, all because of the K-9 support decal. She's calling it advertising, Sarah said. Inside, the board attendant barely glanced up. $450 to release, cash or card. Extra $50 if it's after 24 hours. This van is specially equipped for a disabled individual, I explained. Towing it is a federal violation. He shrugged. Take it up with your HOA. I just filed the paperwork. Fuming, I paid the fee. When we reached Sarah's van, I spotted it first, a new scratch along the wheelchair ramp. Sarah saw it too. She didn't say anything, but the silence that followed was what her fellow officers had once dubbed her storm warning.
Photograph everything, she said, Every scratch, the documents, this entire lot. We're building our case. On the drive home, Sarah got to work, making calls, first to her lawyer friend, then to a few trusted former police colleagues, and finally to a local news reporter who once covered her K-9 unit. "Melissa, it's Sarah Reynolds," she said. "Remember that piece you wanted to do on housing discrimination against first responders? I think I've got a story for you." By the time we pulled into the driveway, Sarah had set up for the news crew to meet us at the HOA meeting that night. As we approached the house, something new caught our eyes. Small American flags had been placed along the edge of our property. "What's this about?" I wondered aloud. From across the street, our neighbor Frank waved. He was an older gentleman who'd lived there for decades. "Heard what happened with Eleanor in the van," he called. "Those flags mark the original property lines, before the neighborhood was developed. I've been here 30 years. Your lot's never been part of their precious HOA." Sarah gave him her first genuine smile of the day. "Thank you. Been waiting for someone to stand up to her," Frank added. "Most folks around here are scared. She got the Gonzalez family kicked out last year over a food truck dispute." Inside, we got ready for battle. Sarah changed into her formal police uniform, the one she wore for commendation ceremonies. She was retired, but still legally allowed to wear it for official functions. She pinned her medals with care, then tucked a photo of her and her K-9 partner Max into her wheelchair pouch. "Psychological warfare," she told me when she caught my look. "Eleanor wants to humiliate us. I'm going to remind everyone exactly who she's dealing with." The HOA meeting was being held in the community clubhouse, a building that had only one tiny ramp around the back. Sarah immediately took note. "Front entrances must be accessible," she murmured, snapping photos. "Strike one." Inside, about 30 neighbors were seated in neat rows, facing a long table where Eleanor and 4 board members sat. A sign-in sheet made the rounds. Sarah took a photo before signing. "Non-compliant homeowners will each have 2 minutes to present their case," Eleanor announced without looking up. "Board decisions are final." She faltered, though, when she finally did look up and saw Sarah, dressed in full uniform. A ripple of whispers moved through the room. "Officer Reynolds," Eleanor said, trying to recover. "You're out of order. You want me to keep rolling into what happens next at the meeting? Haven't called your case yet," came a voice from the doorway. Heads turned. Captain Rodriguez stepped inside in uniform, flanked by 2 officers and a woman wearing a press badge. Eleanor's face turned crimson. "This is a private meeting. Media isn't permitted. Public meeting in a public facility." The reporter, Melissa, replied brightly. "In this state, HOA meetings that involve governance decisions are subject to open meeting laws." Sarah rolled her wheelchair to the center aisle. "We're here to address several issues, Eleanor. First, the unlawful towing of my ADA-compliant vehicle. Second, the continued harassment regarding our home, which, as documentation proves, is not part of your HOA." Eleanor's hand gripped her gavel so tightly her knuckles went pale. "We have no record of any exemption." I stepped forward and calmly laid a stack of papers on the table. Original deed from 1978, a 2003 property survey, title insurance documents, all noting HOA exemption. And, I added, sliding one last document across, a cease and desist letter from our attorney regarding the ADA violations. Captain Rodriguez stepped forward. "We're also investigating patterns of selective enforcement and potential kickback deals involving rapid recovery towing. Several residents have already filed complaints." The room erupted with murmurs. A nervous woman stood up. "They towed my son's car last month. Said his university decal counted as signage. It cost us $400 to get it back." Another voice chimed in. They fined me for a basketball hoop. Said it was 6 inches too tall. Eleanor slammed her gavel repeatedly. Order, these complaints aren't on the agenda. I motion to add them, said one of the board members, an older woman who'd been quietly watching the whole time. And I move that we review the towing contract, particularly the part about it covering landscaping at Eleanor's vacation house. Eleanor turned ghost white. Judith, that's outrageous. Completely inappropriate. Is it? Judith replied coolly, shuffling papers. Because as treasurer, I've been reviewing our records, and I've found multiple payments made to Matthews Landscape Design, registered to your son's address. The room fell silent. I think, Sarah said into the stillness, we found the real issue here, and it's not my K-9 support decal. Melissa's cameraman captured the exact moment Eleanor's expression crumbled as Captain Rodriguez stepped forward again. Mrs. Matthews, we'd like you to come with us to the station and answer some questions regarding potential misuse of HOA funds. As Eleanor was escorted out, still sputtering protests, the remaining board members wasted no time voting. Recognize our property's exemption. Refund the towing charges. Launch a full audit of HOA financials. Outside afterward, a small crowd of neighbors surrounded Sarah, each with their own HOA horror story. Frank approached with a bottle of wine. You've changed everything, he said. People have been too scared to speak up for years. Sarah looked thoughtful. This isn't the end. HOAs can serve a real purpose when they're run with integrity. The problem here was corruption, not the structure itself. What are you thinking? I asked. She gave me that look, the one that meant a plan was forming. I might run for the board. Someone needs to make sure this never happens again. As we drove home, Sarah's phone rang. It was Melissa from the news. This story's blowing up, she said. I've had 3 other HOAs reach out already with similar situations. How would you feel about helping with a bigger investigation? With your law enforcement background, you'd be the perfect consultant. Sarah raised an eyebrow at me. I grinned. Sounds like retirement just got a little more interesting. I'm in, Sarah told Melissa. But on one condition, we focus on solutions, not just scandals. After hanging up, she gazed out the window at the neighborhood. You know what this means, right? That Eleanor picked the wrong person to go after? I said. Well, yes, she laughed. But also, we need to be ready. Once this story spreads, people are going to need help. Lots of them. Good thing I married a fighter, I said, squeezing her hand. And good thing I married someone who knows when to pay the towing fee and when to call in backup, she replied with a wink. Now, let's go plan our next move. The next morning, sirens wailed in the distance as I paced the living room. Sarah sat calm in her chair, phone in hand, a small, knowing smile playing on her lips. The clock read 8:03 a.m. They're here, she said, glancing out the window. 2 police cruisers pulled up across the street, right in front of Eleanor's immaculate Tudor home, with its painfully symmetrical hedges. The whole neighborhood seemed to freeze. Even Mr. Jenkins from next door put down his garden hose and edged closer to his fence. Did you really need to call the K-9 unit? I asked. Trust me, sweetheart, Sarah said. Eleanor crossed a line when she had my van hauled off, and when I called Rodriguez, he said other complaints had started coming in. Officer Thompson stepped out of the first cruiser, her tall frame and dark hair pulled back in a no-nonsense bun. Beside her, her K-9 partner Ranger, a sturdy German shepherd. From the second car came Captain Rodriguez himself, along with another officer I didn't recognize. Eleanor burst out of her front door, silk robe fluttering, coffee cup in hand, looking stunned. "What is going on here?" she shouted for everyone to hear. I couldn't resist. I snapped a quick photo. After months of her snapping pictures of our supposed violations, it felt like the universe was evening the score. Officer Thompson approached, Ranger at her side. "Mrs. Eleanor Walters," she said, voice steady, "we've received multiple reports regarding potentially unlawful activity tied to Pine Haven Gardens HOA. Eleanor's face went pale, almost ghostly. "That's ridiculous. What sort of illegal activity are you even talking about?" "Financial inconsistencies, intimidation tactics, and potential fraud," Officer Thompson replied.
Evenly, her tone cool and professional. "We need immediate access to the HOA's financial records." "This is outrageous," Eleanor sputtered, jabbing a finger in our direction. "They're behind this. They're just upset about the van." Captain Rodriguez stepped forward. "Ma'am, these allegations didn't come from a single source. We can handle this here or downtown. Your choice." Eleanor shot daggers at us from across the street. I gave her a wave. Sarah blew her a kiss. "Fine," Eleanor snapped. "Come in, but this is harassment, and I will be filing a complaint." As the officers entered her house, neighbors started trickling out onto their lawns. Words spread like sparks on dry grass. Phones came out. Cameras clicked. Mrs. Patel hustled over, out of breath from her brisk walk. "What's going on?" she whispered. Sarah gave a polite smile. "Just some questions about how our HOA's been run." "Eleanor raised the dues 3 times in 2 years, Mrs. Patel said. She said it was for landscaping and new security systems." "Have you seen any new landscaping?" I asked. "Any security cameras?" Mrs. Patel's eyes widened as the realization hit. 45 minutes later, additional cruisers arrived. Eleanor was escorted from her house, not in cuffs, but clearly not by choice. Captain Rodriguez carried a box of documents. Rangers sniffed around the garage where Officer Thompson discovered a hidden safe behind stacked garden tools. "You did this!" Eleanor yelled at us as they guided her toward a cruiser. "You're not even real members. You'll regret this." Sarah wheeled to the edge of the driveway, calm as ever. "Actually, Eleanor, we should be thanking you. If you hadn't illegally towed my van, no one would have looked at your books." The crowd had grown larger by now, the whispers turning into open conversations. Martin Cooper, the HOA vice president, showed up looking like he'd run through a storm. Captain Rodriguez pulled him aside for a quiet but clearly intense conversation. Martin kept nodding, looking paler by the second. Later that afternoon, there was a knock at the door. Martin stood there, clutching a thick folder, hands visibly shaking. "I didn't know," he started. "I swear. Eleanor kept a second set of books. She's been skimming nearly 30% of the dues for personal expenses." "That's quite the side hustle," Sarah replied dryly. "There's more," Martin said. "The towing company that took your van, her brother-in-law owns it. They've been targeting non-HOA members for years and splitting the profits." My jaw tightened. "How many people?" "At least a dozen families in the past year. Most just gave in and joined the HOA to avoid more trouble." Sarah leaned forward in her chair. "And now?" Martin swallowed. "The board's meeting tonight for emergency elections. Eleanor's been removed while the investigation continues. The police are asking for statements from anyone she targeted." "We'll be there," I assured him. Once Martin left, Sarah opened her laptop and started typing furiously. "This isn't over." "What are you doing?" I asked. "Emailing everyone who's been towed. Rodriguez gave me the list." Her eyes gleamed with determination. "Eleanor thought she could steamroll a disabled woman. She picked the wrong one." That evening, as we were getting ready for the emergency board meeting, our doorbell rang. A local news reporter stood on our porch, microphone in hand, with a cameraman behind her. "Mrs. Sarah Mitchell, we'd love to talk to you about the unfolding HOA fraud scandal in Pine Haven Gardens." Sarah's smile could have lit up the whole neighborhood. "Of course. Would you like to come in?" By the time we got to the community center, the parking lot was packed. Families who'd never attended an HOA meeting were now filling every seat. A news van sat just outside. As Sarah rolled through the entrance, the room fell silent. Then someone began clapping. Within seconds, the whole room followed. Martin banged the gavel. "First order of business, a formal apology to Sarah and James Mitchell and a full reimbursement for the towing incident. A man I didn't recognize raised his hand. I move that from this point forward, HOA membership be truly voluntary, as the law actually allows. The room erupted in cheers. I squeezed Sarah's shoulder and we shared a look. This was only the beginning. 3 weeks later, rain pounded our windows as I poured Sarah a cup of tea. Court date's been set for next month, she said, reading an email on her tablet. The prosecutor wants me to testify about the towing. I sank into the armchair. You ready for that? More than ready. She set the tablet down. Did you see Martin's notice about today's HOA meeting? I nodded. The emergency election had landed Martin as president, with Mrs. Patel as treasurer and Mr. Jenkins as secretary. Their first move? Making HOA membership truly optional. They want me to head a new committee, Sarah said, the excitement peeking through her voice. Oh? What kind? Accessibility and community relations, she replied, spinning her wheelchair in a half circle. Funny how they suddenly care about ramps and handrails. Just then, the doorbell rang again. I opened it to find Mrs. Patel holding a large cake. For you both, she said warmly. It's the least I can do. I should have spoken up a long time ago. Come in, I offered. Sarah just made tea. Mrs. Patel stepped inside, and for the first time in a long time, the house felt like part of a real community. Looking around with admiration, Mrs. Patel smiled warmly. Your home is just lovely, so different from when the Thompsons lived here. Sarah wheeled into the hallway. You knew the Thompsons? Oh yes, Mrs. Patel nodded emphatically. They moved out after Eleanor threatened to sue them over a fence that was supposedly a few inches too tall. They were the fourth family on this street to leave because of her. We gathered around the kitchen island as Mrs. Patel filled us in on Eleanor's years-long reign of terror, the excessive fines, the constant surveillance, the cherry-picking of who had to follow what rule. That neighborhood watch she created? Mrs. Patel said with a shake of her head. Just an excuse to spy on people. And that security system she insisted on? It only covered her house and the community center. After she left, I helped Sarah get ready for the meeting. The community center, suddenly renovated at lightning speed, now had proper wheelchair ramps and accessible bathrooms. Funny what a looming ADA lawsuit can accomplish, Sarah quipped as we headed out. The meeting room was packed once again, but this time it didn't feel tense. Gone were the suspicious glances and stiff silences. Neighbors chatted freely. Kids played at the back. A refreshment table stood along one wall like a small peace offering. Martin called the meeting to order. First off, I want to welcome everyone, whether you're a member of the HOA or not. This is a community gathering now. Applause echoed through the room. Next, I'm pleased to announce that the county prosecutor has officially filed charges against Eleanor Walters for embezzlement, fraud, and misusing HOA funds. The applause this time was louder, more like a celebration. Martin continued, and I'd like to introduce the chair of our brand new Accessibility and Community Relations Committee, Sarah Mitchell. As Sarah wheeled to the front, the crowd broke into cheers. I couldn't help the surge of pride as I watched her take the mic. Thank you, she began. When we moved here, we thought we'd found our forever home. But living under Eleanor's version of an HOA showed us otherwise. Heads nodded. People murmured in agreement. But that's behind us now. We've got the chance to build something better together. My first proposal is to use the $75,000 we've recovered so far, the money Eleanor took from this neighborhood, to upgrade our playgrounds and make them accessible for all children, including those with disabilities. The vote passed unanimously. After the meeting, while mingling with neighbors, Captain Rodriguez approached us. Thought you might want an update, he said quietly. Turns out Eleanor's done this before, twice. She moves in, gets herself on the HOA board, schemes for a few years, then flips her house at a profit and vanishes. We're dealing with a serial HOA scammer. Sarah's eyebrows shot up. I didn't even know that was a thing. Neither did we, Rodriguez admitted. But thanks to you, we're digging into similar cases across the county. On the ride home, Sarah was unusually quiet. I reached over and took her hand. What's on your mind? I asked. Remember how angry I was when they towed my van? She said softly. How helpless I felt. I nodded. That day was seared into both of our memories. I never imagined it would lead to all this. I just wanted to stand up for myself. But it turned into something bigger. As we pulled into our driveway, we saw a small new sign posted in our front yard. Home of the Pine Haven Gardens Accessibility Committee Chair. Sarah laughed. Now that's a sign I don't mind seeing out front. The next morning I came downstairs to find Sarah already dressed and ready to go. Going somewhere? I asked. We both are, she replied with a smirk. The prosecutor just called. They're executing a search warrant on Eleanor's vacation home. Turns out she used HOA funds to buy it. I let out a low whistle. How much did she steal? They're still tallying, but from our neighborhood alone, over $200,000. We headed to the courthouse, where Sarah gave her formal statement. Diane, the prosecutor, sharp-eyed and serious, seemed genuinely impressed. Most people don't keep records like this, she said. 15 years in law enforcement, Sarah replied with a modest smile. Old habits die hard. As we were leaving, we spotted a small group waiting by our car. I recognized several of them from Martin's list, families who'd also been targeted by Eleanor's towing scheme. We just wanted to thank you, said a man in a wheelchair similar to Sarah's. None of us had the guts to fight back like you did, his wife added, beaming. Sarah shook each of their hands. The real change starts now, with all of us, working together to make this community stronger. 6 months later, our backyard buzzed with laughter and music. We were hosting a neighborhood BBQ, and the new playground had just been finished, complete with wheelchair ramps, inclusive swings, and soft turf for safer landings. Eleanor had pled guilty to avoid a trial and was now serving 18 months in county jail. As I flipped burgers on the grill, I watched Sarah showing a group of kids how her service dog Max could retrieve things for her. The children were enthralled, asking her questions about police dogs, her time on the force, and how her wheelchair worked. Martin walked over with a cold drink and a grin. You know, this neighborhood's never felt more connected, he said. Sometimes, I replied, watching Sarah laugh with the kids. It takes someone trying to enforce the wrong kind of rules to remind people what community really means. And sometimes, Martin added, raising his drink, it takes someone brave enough to say no. I raised mine in return. To saying no to bullies, and yes to real community. All around us, Pine Haven Gardens had transformed. Neighbors chatted across fences. Children ran freely between yards. For the first time since moving in, it finally felt like home.